Hello, my name is Malik Jabbar. I want to give you a brief explanation of some of the terms that we are using in the audio that we're about to listen to. That was recorded a few years back, an interview. The subject matter of the audio is Astro-theology. And a quick definition of Astro-theology is star religion. Religion based on the movements and cycles of the heavenly lights. This was a common motive of ancient mythology or religion, however we want to term it. I have written several books on the subject of astro-theology. The Biggest Lie Ever Told, the Astrological Foundation of the Christ Myth in 4 volumes, Lifting the Gnostic Veil, and Secret Origins of Judaism. All of those books deal with this subject of astro-theology. The premise of the books is that ancient and primitive mythology or religion was basically based on astro-theology. The movements of the heavens, the mythology born out of the ancient and primitive people, personifying the heavenly lights and giving them, assigning mythical names to them that could be compared to gods and other mundane elements of the earth. And basically, my books point out and prove that our modern religions, up to date, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and others, they contain elements of the old system. Astro-theology still lives within Christianity, Islam, Judaism. And my books deal with showing the correlations between the astronomical elements and biblical counterparts. Now, the scriptures basically, they're literature. They're not historical books, although many of us accept them as historical, but actually the information, for the most part, is based on epic poems, mythology, and such as that, and should not be taken at face value, which becomes obvious really when we consider the Eden saga. You know, we have a talking serpent and a tree that has knowledge and so forth. A little common sense thinking should tell us that these things should not be taken literally. But I want to point here and make some explanations of the graphic that we have before us here. We have some components of the Garden of Eden myth showing here. You know, we had 2 trees, a serpent, 4 rivers that went through the area, and of course Adam and Eve were also the main characters of the myth. Now over here we have what is called the circumpolar area, what astronomers call the Circle of Perpetual Apparition. Actually, when we think of the North Pole of our Earth, we know that the Earth rotates around the axis of itself, which goes through the North Pole. And when you extend the North Pole into the infinite heavens, that area in the infinite heavens above the North Pole, say for about a diameter of 15-30 degrees or whatever we might consider, that's considered the circumpolar area of the heavens. And the Eden myth really is based on, in its originality I'm talking about, is based on elements of the circumpolar area of the heavens. And what I want to do is show some correlations between the two, so that when we get into the discussion that follows in the interview, you have a little better understanding of the discussion. But now we can start off with the two trees here. And we got to remember, we're talking about symbolism. And the original symbolism that these symbols stood for, and which just can't be taken literally by most of us who are rational. But now, the trees, 2 trees, if we look over in this section here of the cosmic heavens, you'll find marked here the ecliptic pole and the Earth's celestial pole. These are cosmic coordinates that were known and recognized by the ancients. And now I'm giving a brief explanation here, make that point, just for clarity and understanding in audio, and a step-by-step explanation of all this stuff is in my books. And it's somewhat difficult to give a comprehensive explanation just in an introductory statement. So I'm just trying to make you familiar with the subject matter, not communicate an in-depth understanding of it all. In order to get that, you have to do a little reading. But the trees of the Eden saga are symbols of the poles. The Earth's celestial pole, as I said previously, when we extend the Earth's pole into the heavens, that particular axis, it becomes the celestial pole of the heavens. And another major component of the circumpolar area is the ecliptic pole. The ecliptic pole refers to the pole of the sun's path, the sun's apparent path around the earth. We know that path is called the ecliptic. And the pole of the ecliptic extending into the heavens is situated in this position. Now, another interesting element of the cosmic heavens that is portrayed in the Eden myth is the serpent. We were taught that the serpent was entwined about the tree of life to guard it. That symbolism of that reptile is referring to the constellation Draconis. Now we see the constellation Draconis here. I have the arrow pointing to it. And if you notice the configuration of the constellation Draconis, it encircles the pole of the ecliptic. So when they were saying that the serpent was entwined around or wrapped around the tree actually, as I said, in the symbolism being the pole of the ecliptic, when we look to the starry heavens, we can see the constellation of Draconis fulfills that symbolism in that it spirals, so to speak, around the pole of the ecliptic. And another component were the four rivers going through the garden, issuing from the garden. That refers to the four cardinal directions. Now you notice in our graphic here we have a circle with the four lines: east, west, north, and south. Those are the four cardinal directions, which are very important to the measuring of time and seasons and all that. And all this stuff is, all these factors are explained thoroughly within my books. But the four rivers that are referred to actually is referring to the four cardinal directions: north, east, south, and west. Now, Adam and Eve, who were the main particulars of the saga, apparently the first pair according to the Bible. Now, I have excluded them from this explanation because they come up in another phase of the symbolism. There's stellar symbolism, there's lunar symbolism, there's solar symbolism, there's equinoctial symbolism, there's agricultural symbolism. There are various phases of the symbolism. There's just not one category. And within the books we cover all the categories, but in this presentation here we need to stay focused on what we can call circumpolar symbolism. Adam and Eve are actually part of the solar symbolism and also kind of mixed with the stellar symbolism. They actually Adam and Eve refers to Castor and Pollux of the constellation Gemini, and that Bible information about them, it goes back really to about 6006 BC when Gemini was at the vernal equinox. But that's another discussion that we can't go into right now. But I've tried to give you here some basics on what astro-theology is, and hopefully some matters I discuss in this interview will be more understandable with this basic introduction.
The Garden of Eden saga in the Bible. Now we know with that tale, we have a situation of Adam and Eve, supposedly the first human pair, and we find them in a garden of delights with a talking snake, with a tree that has knowledge, with another tree of life. Now, this particular tale, I think most rational people will agree, excuse me, I have to take a sip of tea there. I think most rational people will agree that the tale cannot be literally true, although there are fundamentalist Christians and Muslims who say it has to be true. But I think most of us who think rationally about that scenario depicted in the Bible know that it just cannot be true. And now either it's just total nonsense for a rational thinking person, or it must be symbolic of something. And what we do with astro-mythology, with scenarios like that depicted in the Bible of Adam and Eve, we search the ages and the eras of the heavens, and we try to find some correlations so that we can find the cosmic or astronomical counterparts to this talking serpent, to this tree of life, to the tree of knowledge and good and evil, and to Adam and Eve. And by finding these correlations, then we're able to break the symbol, decode the symbol, and make some type of rational sense out of that story. And I'm going to give an overview of the definitions which I have found in my research on this subject. In searching for correlations to the event described, when we go back about 8,000 or 9,000 years to the astrological age of Gemini, which that astrological age, it came on about 6,606 BC, if my memory is correct. I have a chart of all these ages, astrological ages, in my books, of course. But an astrological age, of course, that is referring to which particular zodiac constellation is occupying the vernal equinox in any given era. And the astrological ages, they go from, they measure 2,160 years. That means that a particular zodiac sign is occupying the vernal equinox for that period of time. And 6,606 BC, we find Gemini coming to the collar of the vernal equinox. Now, also at that time, in 6,606 BC, some other coordinates that are used extensively in astro-mythology or astro-theology are the circumpolar stars. The circumpolar stars, the stars which and constellations which revolve around the polar hub, the celestial polar hub. These are non-setting stars. At the same time that Gemini was coming into play at the vernal equinox, the constellation of Draconis was coming into play at the amongst the circumpolar stars. And the circumpolar stars, you got about 6, 7, 8, 9 constellations, whatever, that are constantly visible because of their positions at the north celestial pole. Now, what we need to do in order to make some sense out of the Adam and Eve scenario given in the Bible is to make some correlations between the positions of the stars during the era of Gemini, because, like I said, we have found that is the era that matches this story in the Bible, and the various components of the Garden of Eden saga. And I'll do that pretty quickly as an overview, and striking details are in my book, as I said before. But now, okay, we have the talking snake of Genesis. Now, this talking snake, it can be correlated to the constellation of Draconis, the dragon constellation. That constellation is known as the dragon, is known as the serpent, is known as a constellation in the mythology I'm talking about, is known as a rather demonic constellation. And that constellation, we can prove and have proved, has correlations to the talking snake in the Genesis of the Bible. Now, we notice that the Bible tells us that this serpent in Genesis, it was wrapped around the tree and communicated with Eve and Adam from that position. Now, two other major components of the circumpolar era, by which it is demarcated, are the celestial pole and the pole of the ecliptic. The celestial pole, of course, is an extension of the earth pole into the heavens. And the pole of the ecliptic being the pathway of the sun, apparently around the earth, and its pole, of course, is 90 degrees from the ecliptic. So the pole of the ecliptic and the celestial pole are about 23.5 degrees apart. But the point is, that helps bring great clarity to this myth in the Bible, is that the constellation Draconis is a winding, twisting constellation. And when you look at the charts that shows this constellation in the sky, it actually wraps around the pole of the ecliptic. If we substitute the term pole for tree, you know, and we got to think in terms of how the ancients thought thousands of years ago when they viewed these heavenly apparitions, and using descriptions for them that were germane to their environment, we can see the pole of the ecliptic as actually a tree, and Draconis wrapped around the tree, and this gives meaning to the serpent within Genesis wrapped around the tree. the constellation of Draconis wrapped around the pole of the ecliptic in the heavens. Now, the Bible also says that there was a tree of life, that there's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Now, the other tree, of course, is the celestial pole of the earth. Now, the celestial pole, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, the stars that revolve around the celestial pole, they never set. They're there constantly. We know that our other stars, they come and go. We don't look at the same stars overhead from month to month, except for the circumpolar stars. They never set. They're there night after night, season after season. And so, although in this time we say they never set, we can see the ancients saying, believing that there were spirits in the heavens and so forth, that those stars never die. They live constantly. They live from season to season, from year to year. They're always seen, the circumpolar stars. So we can see, as envisioning how they saw these things, with the hub that these stars and constellation revolved around, these ever-living stars that never died, this hub was viewed in their picturesque language as a tree of life, which the constellation and stars that never died revolved around. This was a source of that life in their picturesque language. So here we can see, in a brief overview, that a story within the Bible and the Quran and so forth that absolutely has to be viewed as an absolute fairy tale, when we look for correlations on the basis of astro-theology, we can find some matches. This, with a little more knowledge, can help us make sense of the whole saga, the whole story that is given on through the expelling of Adam and Eve from the garden, and et cetera, we can make sense of this whole scenario by bringing forth correlations from the cosmic arena. So, in a nutshell, I'm trying to give an overview of the type of material that my books delve into.
Right.